Hey everybody, it's Mike Sheffer, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to Talking Jazz, episode 110. 110. I'm here with Frank Catalano. We are at Club Lucky, one of your favorite spots, I do believe.
Definitely.
And he is performing among everywhere else in the world, which we'll get into slightly on this one, but he is definitely performing at the St. Charles Jazz Fest coming up September 6th through the 9th. He's playing every day and twice on Saturday. It's usually twice on Sunday, but twice on Saturday. So Frank, first of all, pleasure. Thanks for allowing me to come into your private dining room here at Club Lucky. It's very nice. Question for you is, you're living half the time now in New York, half the time here in Chicago somewhat, right? I mean, so this is going to be a really exciting opportunity for people in the western suburbs to see you, because you haven't been to St. Charles on a regular basis like you used to because you're so busy. You've been traveling. You just got back from Spain and everything else. So let's talk a little bit about the fest first off, since we're starting off with this thing. You're playing Thursday night at the Filling Station, Friday and Saturday at House Pub, Saturday afternoon at the Plaza in downtown St. Charles, and then you're going to wrap the whole thing off at the Finery and Blacksmith on Sunday afternoon. How are you going to do all this?
I'm just going to try to make sure my lip doesn't fall off, I think, because, yeah, it's a lot in a 4-day time period. But it's going to be super fun. Like you say, I have a lot of friends and family out there. I always look forward to it. Pretty much, now these St. Charles weeks are more or less the only time I'm out there. Hopefully a little bit more often with House Pub, sometimes a birthday show. But I used to be out there playing all the time, and I miss it. So this is going to be a really fun week.
So all the information you can get at downtownstcharles.org, and of course you can follow Frank at catalanomusic.com. So let's talk about this now. You've got new CDs out, you've got your saxophone technique book out, but you decided maybe about a year and a half ago you've also got a place in New York now, which seems to have really launched your career a little bit more in the New York area, even though you were playing there, but also it seems like you're going to Europe a lot more often too. So you've got a lot of things going on. What's it like living in both places and traveling so much?
Well, it's funny because I think at this point I'm elsewhere more than Chicago or New York, but we still own our house in Bucktown that we've had forever, and 2 years ago Sona and I bought an apartment in Greenwich Village. So we're bouncing back and forth, but a whole month in Europe this up until about a week ago or so, and then went straight here to do the Arlington Million with our friend Jim Cornelison, and then to New York for 3 concerts. So it's been very busy, and I did just sign on to AB Artists that is run out of Birdland Jazz Club, so I have residencies at Birdland and a bunch of fun New York clubs, of course. So it's just been kind of nonstop, but super fun.
Yeah. Well, so you just came back. Where were you? You were specifically in Spain, or was it a little Italy in Spain or something?
We were in France, we were in England, and then we were in Spain. So it was about 3.5 weeks. And then we flew straight flight from Barcelona to Chicago, basically took a shower and changed, and then we did the Arlington Million concert.
That's right. So this is going to be one of your first concerts kind of back in Chicago where you're playing an entire weekend, right? I know you still have your Green Mill when you're in town. You do the late night at Green Mill.
I'm going to do that tomorrow. I did last Wednesday, but I was off from the Green Mill schedule for over 2 months. I think I was still on the schedule if you see it listed, but I wasn't there to perform. That, and then I do have September 11th, 14th, and 15th at Andy's Jazz Club. That'll also be kind of a fun run as well. But in the St. Charles Jazz Fest realm, this is going to be 4 fun-filled days. And I've not done the Saturday. I think it's more evening, it's, I want to say around 5 o'clock start, but in the actual, outside pavilion and whatnot. So that'll be very fun.
Well, I think when they first started this, you were one of the first performers on that, and they've always wanted you to play. I know you have a really good, long relationship with Steve, right, at House Pub.
Steve's my buddy times 10.
Yeah, so I mean, you've been out there, but I mean, you were one of the first ones, I think, kicking this whole thing off, and ever since you kicked it off, I think you've been one of the headliners the entire time. So they really treat you well out there. I would
Yeah,
imagine.
I mean, I love everybody involved very much, and it's always super fun for me, to say the least.
So now you've got several different albums, and this newest one with Jimmy Chamberlain from the Smashing Pumpkins. Is this the third one or the fourth one?
This is the fourth one, and this one is our Japan album. We were actually in Japan playing when Son and I were buying our condo in New York, and the sellers tried to back out. So that was a whole nother thing, nightmare, real estate-y thing, playing 8 concerts, in Tokyo with a group of musicians you like, and trying to hold it all together. So
this is live, right?
This is live. This was recently #1 on the Billboard Jazz charts, the traditional jazz chart, and very proud of that. And then also Hal Leonard just put out this saxophone technique book, which I've been meaning to give you for some time. So
Yeah, we
happy
gotta
to
review
finally.
this.
And I brought those, of course, for you too, because I don't think you have these yet. I know you
No.
had the one with Sanborn, would have been the one prior to this one.
Well, and this one came out, I remember when you were recording the DVD. So there's a DVD that accompanies this, correct?
You know what's interesting? When I signed the contract a couple years ago, they were still putting DVDs and stuff. Now nobody seems to use DVDs, so there's a download code so you can watch the video.
Ah.
But it is ironic that in a short blink of the eye, so to speak, DVDs kind of seem to have been discarded, and it is a download code. But yes, there is an accompanying video.
Well, it's amazing. So you've got the new, it's Modern Saxophone Techniques by Frank Catalano on Hal Leonard. And then the fourth release you and Jimmy have put out.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine you're going to be playing tunes from all of the different releases that you've put out with Jimmy.
Definitely.
Because each one has like topped the charts. I mean, you're always #1 on iTunes. You're always up on the top of the Billboard Jazz charts. It's always getting heavy radio play. So let's talk a little bit about some of the repertoire that you're going to be able to play. Obviously, you've got a lot of original tunes, but you also go back to those standards that you've always grown up with when you first started off with Tony Bennett, Louis Bellson, and everybody like that. So you're kind of playing a mixture this weekend since you've got like 4 shows, 5 shows?
I always love the certain standards, especially the one from when I was 10, 11, 12, first inning with Von Freeman. Bye Bye Blackbird, Softies in the Morning Sunrise, Our Love Is Here to Stay. So I always love playing those. Might not, play all of my favorite ones, but we're going to at least work in some. And then, several new songs that I've written we're going to try out, as well as the originals that are on the Tokyo #9. So I think it'll be pretty action-packed and different sets each night, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think one of the coolest things for people to come and hear you play is that you actually tell the stories about some of the tunes, like, oh yeah, well, I was playing this tune with Etta James and I recorded and stuff, and people I don't think are paying attention when you say that, and then also, wait a minute, what did he just say? And then you play At Last, or you're talking about Bye Bye Blackbird, and you talk about a story, so you're really kind of giving people a little bit of history of what it means to you, right? I mean, those tunes have like a lot of background.
I pretty much don't play any songs that don't personally mean something to me, because I just feel like obviously anyone can go play any song as like a musician or a technician, but to play stuff that you really love and means a lot to you, usually I'm going to play stuff that has a deep meaning for me. And a lot of those old standards, being a young player, getting to play with legendary people who sometimes, most of the time now, aren't with us, unfortunately, makes it extra special for me. I really would play a song that I didn't have a strong connection to, for sure.
Well, and the other thing is that you also have all these great original tunes, and I mean some of them have been sampled, I think, and pulled, but you are able to write these catchy tunes and these kind of really advanced tunes, or however harmonically advanced tunes, and you're playing and all that stuff. But it's because I think. Isn't it because you've kind of got that huge base of traditional jazz and then you brought it up and kind of modernized the whole thing, right?
I would never want to get rid of the proper jazz bass that, I love and I grew up with and grew up playing with all the legendary, I mentioned Von Freeman already, but, Eddie Harris, Randy Brecker. I mean, so I would feel like I would be letting those guys down if I didn't adhere to that. But yeah, when I first got signed to Delmark Records, over 20 years ago, I found it was just, I would get catchy melodies in my head, and I would like to, write them and explore them. In a way, some people kind of bashed me for them, meaning like they thought that they weren't complicated enough. But then now, most of the bands, whether it's Snarky Puppy, on down the line, they're kind of doing stuff that, that me, Paul Werdico, Randy Brecker did an album together that it's all very fun, catchy stuff, but we're exploring stuff. And it's funny how, like, some critics maybe 20 years ago were like, oh, this doesn't have enough substance to it. But now those same people will write things about bands that are basically, I don't want to say copying my songs, but in a couple of cases, more or less has happened recently. So I just kind of laugh it off and say, well, I love playing and it's fun. But it is interesting how over a 20-year span, when I read certain things that have been written, how things change and perspective changes.
Well, you were ahead of the game. It evolved, right? I mean, it evolved to catch up with what you were doing.
In some cases, I'm behind the game because I like the traditional stuff. But it is funny if your music is rooted in tradition and you try to do something outside of traditional roots, some people might be upset by that. And now that things have gone full circle, I find it kind of amusing.
Yeah,
so it's been kind of fun.
Well, you probably inspired a lot of these other bands. I'm sure a lot of them have probably heard your stuff, right? Even though you're probably the same age as them because you were doing it when you were super young.
Now that I'm getting older, I am older.
Oh, okay. Well,
I wish I was the same, but yeah, it's funny. Like I get these emails. Sometimes people saying, "Oh, thanks, this was cool." I saw your Downbeat ad for Yamaha in 1999, and I'm like, oh my god, how can that be 20 years ago? But so in some cases, I hope maybe it did help or inspire some stuff. In some cases, the other people are inspiring me. So again, it does go full circle. But it is interesting how 20 years ago, what might be seen to be good or bad changes to the next decade, to the next decade. So I find it pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. It's almost like when you started this book, there were DVDs, and now it's downloads. Everything keeps moving forward.
That has changed very quickly. Very quickly.
All right, so one of the last things that you have to check out, Frank, at one of these shows in St. Charles, outside of the music, the incredible playing and all that stuff, Frank also enjoys hanging out with people that come out and see him, I believe, don't you? You have a tendency to hang out a little bit afterwards and have a good time.
Yeah, I always like cool people.
And you always have all of your merch, so you can pick up all 4 different discs that you have, that saxophone
we have
book
those,
and everything else, right?
and we have vinyls, but they're pretty much sold out. We still have our Pledge Music campaign going, but we already hit the number we were looking for, so I think most of the vinyls are sold out on that, so I'll try to snag a couple and bring them along, but so I will have some merch. I just don't know exactly how much, but there will be some for sure. So.
And you'll sign them, and you'll hang out and all that stuff.
Well, we always have a good time.
That's right. All right, so outside of everything else, you can get all of the information on Frank at catalanomusic.com. Find out where he's playing. So if you're watching this online and you're in Beijing, he's probably coming to a neighborhood near you at some point soon.
It would be nice. Nothing's on the books for Beijing just yet.
It's coming.
Well, we did Hong Kong a year and a half ago. We're supposed to do Singapore beginning of next year, so it's possible, but there hasn't been I've never done a concert in Beijing.
No?
So we got to get that on the books.
That's it. Well, probably because we're talking about it, your phone's going to ring off the hook now. But instead of going all the way there, you can see Frank September 6th through the 9th in St. Charles as part of the St. Charles Jazz Festival. He's playing the 6th at Filling Station, and then the 7th and 8th, 9 p.m. at House Pub, but 4:30, 5 o'clock p.m., I think, in downtown St. Charles in the square area. He's going to be headlining that stage. And then the Finery in Blacksmith on Sunday afternoonish, I think 5 o'clock.
I think around
like that.
5, yeah.
So
kind of dinner time.
Yeah. And so all the information is at downtownstcharles.org, and we'll link that up below. And Frank, I'm really happy we could sit down and talk about this stuff. And man, that weekend's going to be awesome. And I'm glad I caught you when you're finally in town here.
Well, you've been a good friend for a long time, so I think if nothing else, when the camera's off, we get caught up and say hey, and always love hanging out with you, bro.
It's always great hanging out with you, and of course, he will see you hopefully at the St. Charles Jazz Fest, and hopefully I'll see you at the St. Charles Jazz Fest. But as I always end this thing, if we don't see you somewhere this weekend or that weekend, hopefully we will see you somewhere out on the scene.